Okay, so good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for joining us. I'm pleased to be able to do this. It'd be nicer if we could all get to meet each other again, but we will get there. So today's presentation is jointly between Sarah and I. Business planning is one of those areas that, you know, it becomes a bit terribly boring, it becomes a bit nullifying, and it doesn't always do what it's supposed to do. So Sarah and I had a good old think and thought we'd do something a little bit different and tackle this in the way that we would tackle it anyway. So there's a slide there. Yeah, we can read the slide, but this is trying to be a little bit more interactive and be a bit more human as well. So big point is that we know that we're going to nationally come out of a lockdown. We are going to be bouncing back, hopefully in the spring. So we as business people have got a plan for it. So that's where we start. Sarah, would you want to add a few words?
Yeah, just to follow on from that, good afternoon, everybody. Good to see you all. So once we have a business plan, then the way that we deliver that is obviously through our people. So when Paul's talked about the business plan and strategy, I will then move on to the people side of things.
Okay, so hopefully that set the scene. So if you'd like to move us along, Penny, please. Thank you very much. So slide there. So I'll try and talk round the slides as we come. Principal bit about plans is don't get hung up on micro detail. Really concentrate on creating a summarized view that gives you something that's clear, concise, and is very realistic. Absolutely no point in just doing something that just goes into a drawer when you've spent months doing it. So it starts, in my opinion, certainly with clear thought around what I would term as the business value proposition. There's lots of ways of looking at this. Those people who might have heard the term, that's fine. I'll just put a little bit of meat on it, really, because I perhaps look at it differently. And having done this with quite a number of different businesses in UK and Europe, everyone looks at it differently, but I'll explain. So business plans, they need to have a clear basis, and that basis has to have relevance to it. The relevance then is transformed into a form of focus, and that focus is very much on what your customers need, be it B2B customers or B2C. So just to comment on that, people who live in the B2B world have got an additional challenge because they are dealing with a customer, but they're also dealing ultimately with a consumer. So the VP message is there to help them understand how to get through, I suppose, the barriers or the considerations that are needed, and make sure that when there becomes a plan, that plan is based on something that's relevant and realistic, i.e. its customer need. So if we look at this, the thing that I would always suggest you consider is using what I term as 5 Ws. Those who know me will be smiling, but it always helps with a logic set because it defines the things that are important. If you can't answer those questions fully, then you can't explain it to anybody else. And more importantly, you will be missing something before you start on the how am I going to do something. So we get all that sort of lumped up together, fine, but we get a plan then that's got to have a qualitative measure as much as a quantitative measure, because numbers are bluntly what set us free, but numbers are absolutely irrelevant if they don't actually tell us something that we can all understand and work with. So there we are. If you'd like to just move us on, Penny, please. Thank you. A little bit of a graphic, and the graphic might explain this a little bit more. So whether you've got a product or a service, the thinking process is the same. You've got to explain what you do and why you do it to prospective clients. They then understand what you're about and how you're going to support their needs and make a view on why you're the best choice. So if we look at the bits on the outer ring that centre around the customer, you can move them around in order. Some people would say, well, you can have more than sort of 4 or 5. You can have lots of them. Yeah, you can do what you want, but you really end up in the same place. And I've sort of settled on these because I find these work. So if we just take them sort of through market insights, it's very much, I suppose, you finding out what is really happening, what is going to happen, and how you're going to react to it. There's no point not being in clear understanding, and I suppose at the time, i.e. now, there's nothing more important to have a good feel of where we think that's going to go. That then takes it through to clarity and vision. Well, if you're not clear, how are you going to explain it to your own people, and how are you going to explain it to your potential customers? So it's got to be absolutely clear. The expertise and qualification part is actually to prove you can do what you're saying. Those people who are in the fortunate position of being able to bring their customers into their business, that is the strongest message of all. You know, walking people around your business, it doesn't matter what it is, again, product or service, talking to people, gaining that insight, gaining that feel that, you know, these people actually know what they're talking about is so important. So that then takes you through into defining the tangible benefits. You know, benefits are what we sell. If you try and sell on price is going to take you only in one direction, and that's down. So sell benefits because people can value a benefit. I'll talk about that a little bit more. But benefits particularly are what people want to understand. Remember that when you're talking to someone, they've also got to take it back to their business and sell it internally. So that is helping them understand in a very sort of succinct and encapsulated way before you write up your business proposal. Because if you haven't done the steps properly, your business proposal won't be full and rich, and it won't be able to be demonstrable to people. People are experts at actually finding issues just when you think there isn't any. So spend the time in the front of it, making sure you're ready. Don't rush this. Don't think it's just a slogan. It's a process that gets your whole business thinking. You can slice it into project teams. You can do it as a senior team. But the one thing with it is it's got to be owned fully from the top table once it's done. So if you just move us along, Penny, please.
I hope you don't mind, Paul. Just to interject, I can see a couple of people that are making notes, which is fabulous. But just to let you know that the event recording and the slides from today's session will be made available in your thank you email as well. So you'll be able to gather all the information from the session.
Oh, thank you. No problem at all. So taking that on, I'm not deliberately trying to rush through this. I just want to give it an oversight. This is a very large, complex subject, but I'm just wanting to make sure people can get a view of it and ask as many questions as they can, because that will help the clarification. So once you've got your plan in structured terms, someone's got to own it. And what I mean by own it is that's the business and particularly the senior team, because if they are not proud of it, can't explain it, not accept, you know, deviation without them agreeing it, then you're not going to have a plan that becomes cohesive and whole. It'll be diluted, and everyone will be thinking, well, I thought it meant this, and we all thought it meant that. And by the time you've finished, you've ended up with a camel rather than a thoroughbred. And this is all about having a thoroughbred to go to market with. So the plan will definitely mean different things to different businesses and their processes. But this is where the thinking comes in, is we all have to do. So I've seen on the attendance list, we've got some manufacturing people, we've got some service people, we've got some accountants, we've got some marketing experts, we've got some consultants, which is fantastic. But the point of it is this works for everybody, but it doesn't necessarily mean that they are going to do it all exactly the same way. But what they are going to do is end up with something around which a business plan is formed. And that business plan then is broken down into functional deliverables. If I just dwell on that a little bit, depending on what your business does, we can look at this differently. But if we take someone in a service industry, for example, they're still needing to reach out to customers. They're still needing to make sure that their offer is understood. So they've got to decide who is going to do what. And one of the things that I believe works very well, mainly because done it for a while and believe in it, is the use of sort of a SMART goal format, which means then that you have senior strategic goals, i.e. we want to have a plan, and this is the plan. That can then be shared through an organization into teams through the structure, which Sarah will pick up, which then makes sure that everything that's been agreed has a deliverable path. And it means that then you can understand where you are against it. So you can see where we're doing, how success is measured. If there's a problem, what's the problem? We all have to face that we get problems, but the clever bit is fixing them quickly. So this process allows you to break it up into financial needs, marketing needs, capital equipment, new people. Doesn't matter what it is, it has a structure around something which makes sense. So the whole point there is that the project delivery structure actually shows you how the plan is rolled out, and then you can see where you're going. So there. So next slide, please. So this one really often gets forgotten. We all have suppliers into our businesses. They actually should be something that's adding massive value to business. And I'll just dwell on that term because people misunderstand value. Value is what your customers pay for. It is not the cost, it's what they get and what they value. So by doing more of it that is relevant, you're actually adding value to that relationship. Many ways of discussing that, but I'm very much down the view that if you don't give your customers what you want, somebody else will, and quickly. One of the people or structures in your business which is really misunderstood is the use of your suppliers. They have customers, they could be a customer of yours, they understand where the market is, they might be able to give you insights that you didn't have. They are also and should be on your side. So if you are not building those sort of relationships with your suppliers, then that's not going to go through properly to your customers. So to me, the big word that's in there is trust. So if you're not feeling that is working, then there's something wrong in that relationship. So I would say don't miss getting into conversations with suppliers, talk to them regularly, create the virtuous circle, and really make sure that they are coming to you with ideas. They might say, well, we've seen this idea, or we're thinking of buying some particular machinery, or we're going to do something different. It might not seem perfect for you at the moment, but it might spark an idea that gives you that little bit of advantage that allows you to go to your customers and say, we're thinking of doing this, what do you think? And straight away, your relationship is into the added value rather than just being there on the end of a phone and quite dull. So let's have a look at slide 9 then, please. Okay, so I'll do a little bit of a recap here. So you've spent the time working out all of the elements that need to form your value proposition. So you've got it all together, you've run a load of numbers and you're going, yeah, okay, I can understand what that looks like. I've realized that I'm short of equipment, or we haven't got a big enough premises, or our premises are too big. or they're the wrong type or in the wrong place. They're all the things that will come out into that plan. So you start to get something that your leadership team can actually work with and understand what it means for the business. But that's all more than a little bit academic if you don't have good people doing what they're needed to do at the time you do it. So the theory is one thing, but it is driven by people. So I'm conscious that I've gone through that a little bit quickly, but I'm hoping it engenders a lot of questions, and we can then pick those up. So I would just make one final point is that your customers appreciate the value you provide. They're not interested in your costs. So don't get hung up on your costs, get hung up on the creation of value. So if I just hand that to Sarah to pick up the people bit, and then we'll return and do a bit of a summary and a recap.
Great, thanks, Paul. So whenever I'm working with a business, the first thing I would ask them to do is to tell me about their business plan, so I know what they're trying to achieve. The next step is then to consider how we will deliver that business plan through our people. So these are the areas that I will talk through in a moment and that I would always include in a business plan. It's obvious, but I think we all know that it's worth reminding us that happy, engaged, productive staff lead to happy, satisfied customers who will hopefully keep coming back and also refer you, which will help to grow your business. So it's all linked. So I'd like to look at each of those on the slide in turn. So moving first of all onto resourcing and retention on the next slide, please, Penny. So once you've decided what products and services you're going to deliver, what you need to think about is how many of each role do you need to actually deliver those, and what does your structure look like in terms of the business. A lot of organisations have obviously had to change what they were delivering as we went into the first lockdown and throughout the last 12 months, so they've had to pivot, and that has had an impact on people's knowledge, skills and experience as well. We've all had to develop IT skills that we didn't have before, for example, so that we can come on to remote meetings. So a key thing to consider, once we know what the structure looks like, what type of roles we want people to deliver, it's useful to have basic things like job descriptions in place. They don't need to be overly complicated, but what they do is define for you what you want those jobs to deliver, and also help people to understand what your expectations of them are in those jobs, whether that's your existing staff or people that you are recruiting. So you need to look at what knowledge, skills and experience do you currently have in-house within the workforce that you've got, and which do you need to bring in through recruitment. One of the challenges I often see is that a new starter comes into the business, they've interviewed really well, the management team have spent time and money bringing that person in, recruiting them, onboarding them, training them and settling them in, and then for whatever reason it doesn't work out, maybe because that person's values don't align with the culture of the business. So what a lot of organisations are doing now is actually using value-based recruitment, and I know we've got some recruitment people on the call today, and that can help to establish that people are going to be a good fit for the organisation, as well as having the right knowledge and skills and so on. Once you've decided what you're looking for, you need to think about how you're going to find the right people for your business. And there are, of course, lots of different tools available to us now. When I first started in HR, you used to put a job advert in the Yorkshire Post. Not so many organisations do that now. Obviously, you can put things on your own website, on the careers page. Intranet encourage staff to introduce people that they know to your business. Job sites, recruitment companies. There's a wide variety, and it's important to think about what's going to work best for you and your organisation. In situations where you are using a recruitment company, it's really important that they understand you, the business, and the team that the new person is going to be working with. So certainly when I'm working with a client company where we're recruiting into a role and we're using a recruitment agency, I will introduce the recruiter to the recruiting manager so that they can get to know each other because a key part of that process is matching and making sure that the values are aligned, as well as the person having the right skills and so on. As well as the recruitment process being important to finding the right people, other information that you could look at in terms of resourcing and retention is considering what leavers tell you. So why do people leave your business? How long do people stay in the organisation? Have you got a churn of people who are leaving after 3 months, for example? If so, what are the reasons for that? And is there anything that you need to change as a result of the experience and what the figures are telling you? Can move on to the next slide, please, Penny. So the next thing I want to look at is development. So as well as bringing in new people, what we can also do is consider growing business through the people that we already have. We know at the moment that it's a challenging labour market in terms of unemployment is increasing. However, even in the current climate, I come across many businesses who are struggling to find people with the right knowledge, skills and experience for the roles that they're looking to fill. So what a lot of companies are doing is focusing on developing their own staff. This can help people to stay with the business, which obviously impacts on the bottom line. And it can be motivating for people in terms of they can see that there's a career path ahead of them. So there are many different ways, as I'm sure you're aware, of developing people. So you could, for example, use experienced members of staff to mentor and coach new starters and more junior members of staff. We've just had National Apprenticeship Week, so recruiting apprentices and then training them and growing them up through your business. Online training, obviously that's grown over the last 12 months, professional courses, qualifications and so on. And it might be worth, if you're looking at these things, it might be worth exploring whether there's any funding available for some of that development. What I often find is that businesses haven't necessarily looked at their existing staff and thought about what people's career aspirations are. So it's worth having that conversation with people in their one-to-ones, for example, or their annual appraisals, and looking at how you can match what you need in terms of growing the business, who are your future managers, who are your future leaders, with what people's aspirations are, and having some very adult conversations about how you can align those. Talent management and succession planning can also help you to focus on the future of both people and the business. And as I already said, it helps with retention, so it can impact on costs and the bottom line. One of the other issues that I often come across is businesses recruit and promote people because they've got good technical skills, for example, and give them a team to manage, but don't give them any skills to actually lead and manage their teams. So I think it's really important that managers are given basic training in how to recruit, manage, performance manage absence and so on, so that they've got the tools to be able to do that job and get the best out of their team. Next slide, please, Penny. When I'm training managers on performance management, one of the first things that I talk about is going back to what Paul was saying in terms of the business plan. So it's really important that the leaders and managers in an organisation know what the business plan is and have all signed up to it. But they then need to be able to link that to their own teams and down to the level of individual objectives as well. So, and that helps everybody in the organisation to understand the bigger picture and where their contribution feeds into what everybody else is doing and makes a difference. So what I would normally ask managers to do is to involve their teams. That helps to encourage ownerships, helps increase understanding of what the business is looking to achieve. So get them to translate the business plan and strategy into, first of all, team goals, and then what does that mean for each of the individuals in the business as well. And that helps everybody to be on the same page. It can also feed into things like people's development needs, because it will highlight where people need to develop skills and knowledge, for example. What's really important as well is that people understand what the targets mean. So what does good look like? And I always encourage businesses to celebrate successes as well along the way. So when you hit a milestone, recognise it and thank people for their contribution in achieving it. Also important to link rewards to targets so that people can see there's a clear line of sight between the two. Next slide, please. So employee engagement is one of those terms that's often used, but I'm not sure people always know what it means. So, for example, it's not about having an annual staff survey, which you do once a year and put it in the drawer until next time. For me, employee engagement is about connecting with, involving and engaging your workforce. So thinking what motivates them, what interests them, and harnessing that to get the most out of people and to make coming to work an enjoyable experience for them. If you think of an example where you've experienced poor customer service, and I'm sure we can all think of one, that employee that really wasn't interested clearly didn't care about their job, they weren't engaged with the business that was employing them and paying their salary, and the result was poor customer service. So it does have a knock-on effect on the bottom line. One of the challenges as businesses grow can be around communication. It's easy for everybody to be on the same page when there's only a small team, but as an organisation expands, particularly at the moment when people are working remotely, or in normal times when people are based in different locations or out on the road, how do you keep everybody involved with what's going on, up to date and engaged? As we move out of the current ways of working, I think a lot of businesses are going to have a mix of home working, as we all are now, and people going into the office maybe just for meetings, training sessions and so on, rather than everybody going back to work full time. I think a lot of people have got used to having extra time when they're not commuting, saving the cost of getting on the train, parking, petrol and so on, and they don't want to go back to their old life. It's given a lot of people a better work-life balance, and I think a lot of organisations have also found that people are actually more productive at home, not less. Certainly organisations that I've worked with where there was always a cynicism about people working from home, I think they've actually found it's been very beneficial for them during the last 12 months. But again, that poses a challenge. How do you keep people engaged when they're all working remotely, at least some of the time? And how do you help people who are feeling isolated because they're working at home on their own and maybe they also live at home on their own? So it's important to think about how you keep people updated and you get feedback going both ways. So not just from top management down, but also how do individual members of staff who are delivering customer services and products, how do they actually give feedback to the business on what's working and what needs to improve? One of the things I often see is that businesses are looking, for example, to give staff a new benefit. They want to reward and recognise people's contribution, but what they don't always consider is what the staff are actually going to value. So, for example, they might be considering bringing in an employee assistance programme. That might not be something that everybody would value. So basically, I would suggest to a client company that they ask people what they would like, give them some options and see what the most popular is, because it's not going to engage and motivate people if it's not something that they want. And then finally, on to the next slide, please, Penny. If we're spending all this time and energy developing business and people plans and thinking about our strategies and the direction of travel, then it makes sense for us to review that on a regular basis. So important to review progress against the business plan, but also think about introducing some key performance indicators because they can tell you what's going on in the business. So for example, some basic ones you might use from a HR perspective are things like staff turnover, why are people leaving, length of service of those people that leave. That might tell you whether there's an issue with a team manager, for example, or whether you need to address pay as a particular problem. Look at reasons for staff absence and think about why people are actually taking time off, and are they the real reasons for people taking time off? How much time are managers spending on managing issues such as poor performance, disciplinaries, grievances and so on? And again, does that link into management development? Because if managers are spending time on things like that, they can't be leading and managing the business to move forward. And also importantly, you need to keep make sure that objectives, whichever objectives, are still relevant. So as the business evolves, because the economy is changing, then it's important that you refresh and review your business plan and strategies, and also your people plan and strategies. Paul, back over to you.
Unmute. Thank you. So, I hope everyone's managed to stay awake. So good. Thank you, Sarah. That was really very clear. So if we look at this as a bit of a summary, we opened up by saying we'll be clear about what you want to do and why you want to do it, and using that 5W approach. That then gives you your basis of a plan. You've then got an option to then start delivering the how through your people, and as Sarah's gone through in detail, that's where it all comes together or doesn't. So if we just look at all that, the often common mistake made is, yeah, we've got a plan and we've got a budget and that's it. No, it isn't. That's very much the start of it, because then that has to be delivered, it has to be understood. So if we look at the summary there, what we're really meaning is an aligned business. You know, the whole business is on the same path. It understands itself. It knows what it's trying to do. That means, in sort of, I suppose, a bit of management speak, it's delivering value. So just to remind, what I mean in there is, value is what the customer gets, it is, and what they need, rather than anything else. You can get bogged down into, well, it's costing us this, it's doing that. Yeah, all relevant things, but if you're not giving your customer what they want when they want it, you end up measuring your own failure rate, not your own success. So aligned business then gives you the value, gives you the chance to make the financial elements of the plan. It delivers the customer satisfaction, and it most importantly to me, engages your team, as Sarah was saying, because if you don't have an engaged team, you are not going to get productivity increases. You are not going to see people going that extra mile. And it's not so much masses of effort. The biggest thing I feel that people can contribute is their skill and experience and understanding. So if they're not engaged, they're not going to feel there's a environment for them or a place for them to do that. The only people who gain from that in the long term is your competition, because, you know, they might find a better way of doing it. So we've also touched on the idea that it's financially structured. Yeah, okay. Accountants often get a bad rap. Not always fair. Everybody needs to have a clear understanding of their numbers, but what they massively must do is understand how they can use the numbers to benefit the plan and the business going forward. Little point reporting X months later, it was a disaster. You need something that gives you real-time reporting, which allows you to validate the success. It's not subjective, so you don't have people self-measuring themselves and, strangely enough, always find everything's perfect. It's about looking at a structure that gives you financial numbers through the eyes of the customer against your plan, which is driven by the customer need and delivery. That all is delivered by, I would say, to us having effective leadership, which is doing the right things that enables the business to deliver the efficiency needed. So if I just make the point, effectiveness is doing the right things, efficiency is doing things well, you know. So don't get hung up on being the most efficient business, be hung up on being the most effective business, to make sure you do the right things at the right time, the right way. Then the things there will start to become a self-generating circle that actually start to take you forward. So the final point then is, we've looked at this, we've said, right, We've understood our customer, what we're going to do with our customers. We've understood that we should be talking to our suppliers. We've massively understood the role our people have to play in this. We've now got all this working together, pointing towards the success we all want it to be.